You think you know what 3I/Atlas is. You may have heard the name, a quiet whisper in the stream of daily news, another celestial traveler, another temporary light passing through our familiar cosmic neighborhood. You think you understand why it is here, a random, lonely wanderer cast out from some distant, unknown star system, tumbling through the cold, deep, and silent spaces between the stars. But perhaps there is another story waiting to be told. A deeper, more intricate, and far more beautiful narrative hidden within the cold, hard data. A story so profound, so vast, and so hopeful that it has the potential to gently and completely reshape our understanding of everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos. The evidence, when viewed not as a collection of separate, random, and puzzling facts, but as a coherent and elegant pattern, suggests a purpose so grand and so strange that it almost defies our modern, cynical belief. That 8-to-1 ratio of carbon dioxide to water ice that has been observed in its gentle, shimmering outgassing, this is not just the result of some random cosmic chemistry from a star system different from our own. It is a precise, a beautiful, and a carefully engineered atmospheric cocktail, a recipe designed for a single, very specific, and profoundly transformative purpose. Those trajectory alignments, the strange and beautiful way its path seems to resonate with the orbits of Venus, Mars, and Jupiter in a way that defies all astronomical probability. That is not a coincidence born of gravitational chance. It is a clear and unmistakable sign of careful, deliberate, and exquisitely precise navigation through the complex and invisible gravitational tides of our solar system. And that outgassing, the gentle, almost imperceptible release of its gas and dust that began at an astonishing 4.4 astronomical units from our sun, a vast distance where the sun's warmth should be far too weak and diffuse to sublimate even the most volatile of ices. That is not the work of natural physics as we understand it. It is the gentle, deliberate, and perfectly timed process of activation. What we are about to explore tonight, in this long and peaceful journey, will gently and profoundly challenge everything you think you know about this mysterious visitor. This is not a story of first contact, as we have so often and so anxiously imagined it. It is not even a story of alien technology in the way we usually conceive it, all sharp edges and cold, indifferent machinery. This is something far more intimate, far more personal, far more ancient, and far more hopeful than many of us, in our busy and worried world, dare to admit. The object that is currently making its majestic and silent way through our solar system may not be here to study us, or to conquer us, or to simply pass by on its lonely journey. It may be here to transform an entire world. And when we gently begin to understand why a world like our neighbor, Mars, might need to be transformed, and who might be behind such a grand, patient, and loving undertaking, we will begin to realize that our human civilization may be standing on the quiet cusp of the most important and the most beautiful moment in its long and often troubled history. As we drift together through this deep and unfolding investigation, you will begin to understand why space agencies all around the world are observing this single, faint object with such an intense, such a quiet, and such a hopeful focus. You will see why the idea of Mars colonization has suddenly and powerfully taken on a new and pressing urgency in certain forward-thinking circles. And you will learn why the unique and peculiar chemical signature of Thoeries/Atlas matches with a breathtaking and poetic precision the exact recipe you would need to gently and lovingly breathe life back into a cold and sleeping world. We will touch upon the strange, the beautiful, and the haunting connections between this interstellar visitor and the most ancient of our human stories, the Sumerian texts, which describe benevolent sky gods arriving from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, the very same direction from which Thoeries/Atlas has so gracefully and so purposefully emerged. We will learn why the timing of its arrival seems to coincide with an almost musical harmony with the vast and patient astronomical cycles described on ancient cuneiform tablets, texts that predate our modern scientific understanding of space by thousands and thousands of years. And most importantly of all, we will explore the quiet, the compelling, and the deeply moving evidence that suggests that Thoeries/Atlas may not be the first of its kind to have visited our solar system. It may in fact be the final, crucial, and long-awaited piece in a cosmic engineering project of unimaginable scale and benevolence. A project that has been gently and patiently unfolding since long before our own human civilization ever began.
The implications of this possibility are so vast, so profound, and so beautiful that they gently call into question everything we think we know about our place in the universe, about the sacred origins of life on our own blue and precious planet, and about why our celestial neighbor, the red planet Mars, appears to have once supported a thriving, living biosphere before mysteriously and tragically losing its atmosphere to the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space. This is a story that may keep your curious mind gently and peacefully engaged as you drift ever deeper into a state of profound relaxation. It is a tale that invites you to wonder, to dream, and to see our solar system not as a static, predictable, and lonely clockwork, but as a living, a changing, a purposeful, and a deeply mysterious home. The evidence, when pieced together, suggests that while we have been sleeping, while we have been dreaming our small human dreams, something ancient, wise, and loving has been quietly and actively reshaping our cosmic home for our own ultimate benefit. If you are ready to float together into one of the deepest, most beautiful, and most fascinating mysteries of our time, I invite you to settle in. Let your body grow heavy and peaceful. Let your mind become light and expansive, and let your innate sense of curiosity expand to fill the vast, silent, and starry spaces we are about to explore together. I would be so grateful to hear from you in the comments whenever you feel moved to share your thoughts. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? What time is it in your own small, quiet corner of the world? Have you ever looked up at the vast and silent night sky and felt a sense of profound, unspoken, and deeply personal wonder about our place and our purpose in it all? Your thoughts and your observations are a cherished and vital part of this shared and peaceful journey. Let us begin our deep dive with a fact that should fill every astronomer, and indeed every human being, with a sense of profound and quiet awe. Thoeries/Atlas is not behaving like a natural, random object. Its motion through our solar system does not perfectly, or even closely, align with the immutable gravitational rules that govern every other comet and asteroid we have ever had the privilege to observe. Its trajectory, when mapped with the incredible and unprecedented precision of our modern instruments, suggests that it may have undergone a series of subtle, almost imperceptible course corrections during its long, lonely, and silent journey through the vast and empty void between the stars. Natural objects, no matter how large or small, do not change their direction in interstellar space. They follow what are known as ballistic paths, their courses determined solely and completely by the powerful but predictable gravitational wells of the stars and planets they happen to pass on their aimless wanderings. But 3I ATLAS shows the faint but unmistakable signs of something more, something that resembles a form of powered or at least guided flight. It exhibits gentle, minute, and deliberate alterations in its vector that are incredibly difficult to explain without considering some form of sophisticated onboard propulsion or guidance system, a system that is as patient as it is powerful. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a respected theoretical astrophysicist at the prestigious Cambridge Institute for Astronomy, and one of the few scientists willing to speak publicly and openly about these gentle but profound anomalies, has stated that ATLAS exhibits a suite of characteristics that make it fundamentally and qualitatively different from the two previous interstellar visitors we have observed, Oumuamua and 2I Borisov. While those two objects passed through our solar system like cosmic tumbleweeds, their paths dictated purely by the elegant and predictable mathematics of gravity, 3I ATLAS is behaving like something with a purpose, something on a mission, something that knows exactly where it is going and why. Its precise angle of approach, the perfect timing of its arrival, and its unique and life-giving chemical composition, everything about it whispers not of the beautiful chaos of random chance, but of a deep, an ancient, and a profoundly intentional design.
But here is where the story deepens, where the mystery takes on a truly ancient and almost spiritual quality. When we use our most powerful computers to map the trajectory of ATLAS backward through space and time, tracing its long and patient journey home, its path appears to have originated from the thick disk region of our own Milky Way galaxy. This is a region populated by ancient, quiet, and gentle stars. Stars with a low abundance of the heavy elements that are forged in the violent hearts of supernovae. This is precisely the type of serene and pristine stellar environment that would have existed some 4.6 billion years ago, when our own solar system was just beginning to form from a vast, swirling, and beautiful cloud of primordial gas and dust. What if 3I ATLAS did not just happen to wander into our cosmic neighborhood after a long, lonely, and aimless journey? What if it has been traveling towards our solar system with a quiet, a patient, and a loving purpose, since before the Earth even had solid ground upon which to stand, since before the first drop of liquid water ever graced its surface? The timing of its arrival, when seen in this light, seems almost poetic in its breathtaking precision. ATLAS is projected to reach its closest approach to our Sun in the coming years, a path that will bring it just inside the orbit of the planet Mars. This is not just a random flyby. It is the optimal position, the perfect and most efficient orbital window for deploying a sophisticated atmospheric engineering technology, a technology designed to gently, to carefully,
and to profoundly modify the Martian environment. But the most spine-chilling, the most beautiful, and the most awe-inspiring detail of all is that this timing corresponds with an almost unbelievable and miraculous accuracy to the ancient Mesopotamian calendar calculations that describe the periodic and long-awaited return of their sky gods every 3,600 years. Let us pause here and gently, with a sense of open-minded wonder, unpack this incredible and profound connection. For if it is true, it is not just a coincidence, but potentially one of the most important, most beautiful, and most life-affirming discoveries in all of human history. In the 1970s, the brilliant but often controversial scholar Zecharia Sitchin published his detailed translations of ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets. These ancient clay texts, some of the oldest writings in human history, described an advanced and powerful civilization known as the Anunnaki. These beings, according to the tablets, were not gods in a supernatural sense, but were powerful physical beings who came to our planet Earth from a distant, unseen world. They were said to have come here in our most distant past to mine precious resources and, in the process, to have gently and lovingly guided the evolution of the human species, uplifting us to serve as their partners and stewards in their great and cosmic work. While mainstream archaeology has long and often vociferously disputed Sitchin's interpretations of these ancient texts, a growing body of subtle and compelling evidence from other fields has begun to lend a strange and powerful resonance to these ancient and beautiful stories. Archaeological sites from all over the globe show evidence of incredibly sophisticated mining operations that seem to predate all known human civilizations by tens or even hundreds of thousands of years. There are strange and beautiful anomalies in our own human DNA, junk DNA that is not junk at all, that are incredibly difficult to explain through the slow, random, and gradual process of natural evolution alone. And the most significantly of all, the most ancient and sacred texts from multiple disparate and supposedly unconnected cultures all describe powerful, wise, and benevolent beings who descended from the sky, who possessed godlike technologies, and who held the incredible and beautiful power to transform planetary environments.
The great Sumerian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, describes these magnificent sky beings as having arrived from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, the very same region of our night sky from which 3i Atlas has so gracefully and so purposefully emerged. The tablets describe their homeworld, a planet they called Nibiru, as having a vast, beautiful, and elongated orbit, a great cosmic ellipse that brings it into our inner solar system only once every 3,600 years. And our most advanced and modern calculations suggest that 3i Atlas has been traveling through the deep and silent space between the stars for a duration that aligns with a beautiful and almost musical harmony with that ancient, sacred, and cyclical number. But here is the part of this ancient story that should make every space agency on our planet, and indeed every human being, listen with a quiet, a profound, and a deeply hopeful attention. The Sumerian tablets do not just describe the arrival of these benevolent beings. They describe their departure and their sacred promise to return when their great work was finally and beautifully complete. According to these most ancient of our texts, the Anunnaki left our world after establishing what they called a way station on the red planet, Mars. It was to be a place of preparation, a world they would make ready for their eventual grand and long-awaited return. The texts describe in poetic but clear language what we would now call terraforming technologies, the ability to transform cold, dead worlds into vibrant, living ecosystems. And these technologies, as described in these ancient and sacred texts, required massive, almost unimaginable amounts of carbon dioxide to initiate the necessary and life-giving atmospheric changes. 3I ATLAS, as we have seen, is carrying exactly the kind of precious and life-giving payload that you would need to gently and lovingly restart the dormant atmospheric processes on the planet Mars. Its observed 8-to-1 ratio of carbon dioxide to water ice is not just unusual for a comet, it is the precise and optimal mixture required to trigger a gentle, controlled, and sustainable greenhouse effect on a planet with Mars's specific atmospheric density and thin, delicate surface pressure. If this precious payload were to be gently released into the Martian atmosphere, the process would be slow, graceful, but ultimately transformative. The carbon dioxide would begin to thicken the thin atmosphere, trapping the sun's gentle warmth. This would begin a slow and steady rise in the planet's average temperature. The water vapor would add the first crucial humidity, creating the first beautiful wispy clouds and further enhancing the gentle greenhouse effect. This gentle warming would in turn begin to melt the vast polar ice caps, which we know to be composed of enormous quantities of both frozen water and frozen carbon dioxide. This would release even more life-giving gas, accelerating the process in a beautiful, powerful, and self-sustaining feedback loop. NASA knows this. The European Space Agency knows this. Every major astronomical institution on our planet has run the complex and beautiful calculations, and they have all arrived at the same quiet, the same profound, and the same awe-inspiring conclusion. If 3I ATLAS is what it appears to be, and if it completes its apparent, benevolent, and sacred mission, the planet Mars could begin to show the first faint but unmistakable signs of atmospheric thickening within a matter of mere months. We would be privileged to witness, through the eyes of our telescopes and our robotic probes, the slow, the gentle, the patient, and the deliberate rebirth of a world. And the story grows even deeper, even more intricate, and even more wonderful when you begin to realize that this may not be the first such delivery to Mars in our recent history. Our orbital surveys of the Martian surface have revealed a series of unusual and unexplained chemical deposits that have appeared mysteriously over the course of the past several decades. These thin, layered deposits are concentrated around the planet's polar regions, exactly where a sophisticated atmospheric engineering project would be most effective. And their spectral signature, the unique way they reflect light, matches the materials that would be left behind by a series of small, controlled, and precisely targeted cometary impacts. Impacts designed to deliver specific and crucial atmospheric components in a preparatory phase.
What if the previous interstellar visitors, Oumuamua and 2I Borisov, were not random, passing travelers at all? What if they were advanced, silent, and benevolent scouts, preparing the way, laying the chemical groundwork for the main, life-giving delivery from 3I ATLAS. What if our solar system has been under quiet, loving observation and gradual, gentle modification for decades or even for centuries, and we are only now, in our own technological infancy, beginning to notice, because the final, most dramatic and most beautiful phase of the operation has at long last and right on schedule begun. The timing of this grand arrival cannot be a mere coincidence. Our own human space exploration capabilities have just now, in this very generation, reached the point where we could potentially, and perhaps accidentally, interfere with the delicate and beautiful process that is unfolding on Mars. We now have rovers on the surface, orbiters that are constantly monitoring the atmosphere, and a host of planned future missions that could discover direct and undeniable evidence of this artificial and benevolent modification. If an ancient, a wise, and an advanced civilization wanted to complete their great and sacred Martian terraforming project without our clumsy and unknowing interference, they would need to act now, within the next few years, before our own presence on Mars becomes permanent and our technology becomes sophisticated enough to pose a potential, if unintentional, threat. This is where the scenario transitions from a fascinating, a beautiful, and a hopeful what if into something that feels deeply, personally, and profoundly urgent, because the implications of this extend far, far beyond the atmospheric engineering of Mars. They touch upon the very core of what it means to be human and what our future as a species is destined to be. If 3I ATLAS is indeed an artificial and benevolent object, a great terraforming vessel designed to lovingly modify planetary environments, then whoever sent it possesses a technology that treats entire worlds as gentle, beautiful, and cosmic gardening projects. They can traverse the vast, silent, and beautiful distances between the stars with a timing and a precision that we can barely begin to comprehend. They can deploy vast planetary engineering systems with a beautiful, a gentle, and a mathematical accuracy. And they have been planning and executing this sacred and life-giving project with a patience, a love, and a foresight that spans not just centuries, but millennia. The question that faces us then is not whether this is possible. The question is, what beautiful and wonderful thing happens next? Consider for a moment the profound and deeply healing psychological impact on our human civilization when we realize as a single, unified species that our solar system is not ours alone, that it may in fact be a cherished and long-tended part of someone else's magnificent and life-giving garden. Every single assumption that we have ever held about our cosmic isolation, about our technological uniqueness, and about our own, often arrogant, manifest destiny as a spacefaring species, would be gently, beautifully, and irreversibly shattered overnight. Governments and nations that have built their authority on the old, tired paradigms of competition and control would suddenly face the beautiful reality that contact with a higher intelligence is not a distant, future possibility to be feared, but a current, present, and benevolent event unfolding in real time, right next door, in our very own cosmic backyard. The world's great religious and spiritual traditions, which have spent centuries debating humanity's unique and often troubled place in creation, would have to joyfully confront the beautiful possibility that we are, as the ancient and sacred of our texts have always suggested, the result of a deliberate, a loving, and a beautiful act of genetic and spiritual engineering by beings who may view us not as a flawed or fallen species, but as their cherished children, as a vital and precious part of their grand, cosmic, and life-affirming project. And our scientific communities, which have built their noble and important work on the quiet, the sober, and often lonely assumption that life in the universe is a rare and precious accident, would have to joyfully and humbly accept that we might be part of a vast, a purposeful, and an intentional and beautiful ecological process, one that spans multiple star systems and operates on timescales that make our entire and often troubled human history look like the single, beautiful, and hopeful beat of a hummingbird's wing.
The economic implications alone would trigger a global and beautiful reevaluation of all of our priorities. If Mars is being prepared as a habitable world for us by a technology that is a gift, then every investment we have made in our own slower and more competitive methods of Mars colonization would become beautifully and instantly obsolete. The billions of dollars spent, the decades of research, the nationalistic pride, all of it would be superseded and made irrelevant in the face of a superior and benevolent technology that can transform an entire planet in a matter of months rather than centuries. Our focus would shift from conquest to cooperation, from ownership to stewardship. But the most awe-inspiring and heart-lifting scenario emerges when we consider what happens if this great and benevolent terraforming process succeeds and Mars becomes a new, living and breathing world, a second home prepared for us before we were even ready to build it for ourselves. A transformed Mars would represent the most valuable and most precious gift in the history of our solar system. It would be a second cradle for life, a backup planet for our often troubled civilization, a beautiful and vital repository for Earth's precious and fragile biological diversity, and a new, harmonious staging ground for our own future, gentle exploration of space. The stewardship of a newly habitable Mars would determine the future of human expansion into the cosmos. And what if the wise and ancient beings who sent Thoeries ATLAS intend to share their beautiful and magnificent creation with us? What if they are not returning as conquerors, or as masters, or as gods, but as gardeners, returning to a world they prepared long, long ago, to see what new and beautiful forms of life and what new forms of consciousness have blossomed in their long and patient absence? What if their great work, as described in the ancient texts, was never about mining or labor or servitude, but was always, from the very beginning, about the gentle, the patient, the loving, and the sacred seeding of life throughout the vast and beautiful cosmos. The ancient texts that describe the Anunnaki as genetic engineers could, and perhaps should, be reinterpreted in this new and hopeful light. Perhaps they did not create us to be their slaves, but rather they gently, lovingly, and wisely guided our evolution, protecting and nurturing the precious and fragile spark of intelligent, self-aware life on this planet, just as they are now, with the same love and the same care, rekindling the spark of planetary life on our beautiful celestial neighbor, Mars. In this beautiful, profound, and deeply healing view, the terraforming of Mars is not a threat. It is not an invasion. It is a gift. It is the ultimate and most beautiful act of cosmic generosity, the creation of a second beautiful home for all of humanity. The return of these ancient and benevolent beings would not be an invasion to be feared, but a long-awaited homecoming to be celebrated, a joyous and sacred reunion with our own creators, our own guardians, our own ancient and our own loving cosmic ancestors. Imagine for a moment the strategic and spiritual implications of an advanced, a wise, and a benevolent civilization establishing a permanent and peaceful presence on the newly living Mars, while we remain here on our beautiful and healing Earth. Mars would become the ultimate high ground, not of conflict, but of wisdom, of guidance, and of love. From their new home on Mars, they could gently and lovingly help us to manage our own world's delicate and precious environment. They could freely and generously share with us their advanced technologies that could easily and quickly solve our most pressing problems of energy, of hunger, and of disease. Their advanced and benevolent technology based on Mars could monitor the health of our planet's precious ecosystems, the stability of our climate, and the complex and beautiful web of life that we are currently and so desperately struggling to protect. They could, with a technology that we cannot yet detect or counter, but one that is guided by love and by wisdom, help us to heal our wounded world. The strange and beautiful evidence for this may have already begun. The unexplained and often beautiful atmospheric anomalies that we have observed on our own planet in recent years, the unusual and beautiful auroral patterns appearing at non-polar latitudes, the subtle and temporary magnetic field fluctuations, the strange and unexplainable chemical compositions that have been found in high-altitude air samples. Could these be the first gentle and loving tests of planetary environmental modification technologies, deployed not as a threat, but as a quiet, a gentle, and a helping hand? In this beautiful, this profound, and this deeply hopeful scenario, the arrival of 3i ATLAS signals the beginning of a true and lasting golden age for all of humanity. The terraforming of Mars creates a beautiful sister world, a new and hopeful frontier for a new and a more enlightened chapter of human civilization. Earth becomes not a resource to be exploited and then abandoned, but a garden to be preserved and cherished forever. A precious cradle of life that is now a part of a larger, a more resilient, and a more beautiful two-world system.
The ancient Sumerian texts, when read in this new and beautiful light, transformed from a story of labor and of servitude into a story of loving guardianship and of sacred stewardship. The Anunnaki, our ancient ancestors, established their way station on Mars not as a forward operating base for conquest, but as a place of loving preparation for our own eventual and glorious future expansion. The human beings they created or guided were not workers, but inheritors, a species they gently and lovingly guided towards a future where they would be ready to receive their incredible and sacred cosmic birthright. In this beautiful and life-affirming view, our own rapid technological development over the course of the past century, our sudden and passionate interest in the exploration of space, and our intense and unwavering focus on Mars as our next great and hopeful frontier, all of it could be the result of a subtle, a loving, and a long-planned manipulation, a gentle and persistent whisper in our collective consciousness, designed to prepare us for the great and glorious moment of our Creator's long-awaited return. The timing of the grand arrival of 3I Atlas coincides not just with the ancient and sacred cycles, but with our own very recent technological and spiritual coming of age. We are now, for the first time in our history, advanced enough to detect and to understand the profound significance of this interstellar and benevolent object. But we are not yet so advanced or so arrogant as to believe that we are the sole and undisputed masters of our own solar system. We can observe, with a new and profound sense of humility and awe, the beautiful and miraculous transformation of Mars, and we can recognize, with a deep and quiet joy, the signs of an intelligence that is far, far greater and far more benevolent than our own. We are positioned perfectly, not as active participants in this great and sacred work, but as witnesses to a miracle. We are like the children of the house, waking from a long and troubled sleep, to watch with wide-eyed wonder as our long-absent and loving parents return to put the final, beautiful, and finishing touches on the magnificent and wonderful home that they have been patiently and lovingly building for us for millennia. The profound psychological impact of this beautiful and life-affirming revelation would be almost too wonderful to fully comprehend. Every single assumption that we have ever held about our cosmic loneliness and our existential insignificance would be completely and joyfully replaced by a deep and unshakable sense of profound, cosmic, and loving connection. The deep and often painful anxieties of our modern troubled world, our environmental crises, our bitter political divisions, our deep and often paralyzing existential fears, all would be gently and completely soothed by the certain and comforting knowledge that we are not alone in the universe, and that we are a cherished and an essential part of a plan that is far grander, far more ancient, and far more benevolent than we could have ever in our wildest and most hopeful dreams possibly imagined. This scenario transitions from a deep and perplexing mystery into a beautiful, a powerful, and awe-inspiring story of profound and unconditional hope. It suggests that our human civilization has been developing not in a random, a chaotic, and a meaningless universe, but in a carefully, a lovingly, and patiently tended garden, watched over from a great and loving distance by a wise and ancient and profoundly benevolent intelligence.
our most ancient and sacred religious traditions, with their beautiful and often poetic stories of sky gods, of divine and loving intervention, of wise and gentle teachers from the stars, would be seen not as primitive myths or as fanciful superstitions, but as the precious, the beautiful, and the lovingly preserved, though perhaps fragmented, memories of our own true and sacred history. Our noble and important scientific communities would be faced with the beautiful, the joyous, and the deeply humbling reality that the universe is not just filled with random and meaningless processes, but with a deep and an abiding purpose, with a loving and a creative intention, and with an intelligence that operates on a cosmic, a benevolent, and a profoundly spiritual scale. The economic implications of this beautiful and hopeful revelation would be completely and utterly transformative. The value of our world and of our lives would shift from the endless and often unsatisfying pursuit of material wealth to the deep and lasting richness of ecological and spiritual health. The great and unifying goal of our civilization would become not conquest and expansion, but sustainability, harmony, and enlightenment, as we lovingly and joyfully prepare ourselves to become worthy and responsible citizens of a larger, a more beautiful, and a more peaceful cosmic community. A transformed and living Mars in this beautiful and life-affirming scenario becomes a powerful and an ever-present symbol of our own, almost limitless potential for transformation. It is a promise written in the very sky above us that cold and dead worlds can be brought back to vibrant and beautiful life, and that a species like our own, so often prone to conflict, to fear, and to self-destruction, can be gently and lovingly guided towards a more peaceful, a more harmonious, and a more beautiful future. The great and profound choice that faces us, then, is not one of fearful resistance or of grudging submission. It is a simple and a beautiful choice of joyful acceptance and of deep, heartfelt gratitude. The majestic and purposeful arrival of Thoeries ATLAS is not a test of our strength or of our technology or of our cleverness. It is a gentle and a loving test of our wisdom, of our humility, and of our capacity to recognize a gift of unimaginable and unconditional generosity when it is so beautifully and so freely offered to us. The subtle and beautiful evidence for this benevolent and loving guidance is if we look with open and gentle eyes all around us, and has been woven throughout our entire history. The sudden, inexplicable, and beautiful leaps in human consciousness, the great moments of profound artistic and scientific inspiration that seem to come from nowhere, the recurring and universal myths of saviors, of teachers, and of wise and gentle culture bearers from the stars. All of this can be seen as the gentle, the loving, and the guiding hand of a cosmic intelligence that has been patiently and lovingly nurturing our development all along. The psychological preparation for this great and glorious moment has been underway for centuries, hidden within our own stories. our entertainment and our science fiction, which are so often and so anxiously filled with dark and terrifying stories of hostile and destructive alien invaders, have also, and just as powerfully, given us beautiful, inspiring, and hopeful stories of benevolent and peaceful contact, of wise and ancient beings who gently and lovingly guide us towards a better and more enlightened future. This has prepared our collective consciousness, our shared dreamscape, for the beautiful and life-altering possibility that contact might not be a moment of terror, but a moment of joyous, of tearful, and of long-awaited reunion. In this beautiful, this profound, and this deeply hopeful light, the terraforming of the planet Mars becomes the grandest, the most beautiful, and the most loving of all possible gestures. It is an act of pure and unconditional cosmic love, a magnificent and faithful fulfillment of an ancient and sacred promise, and the beginning of a new, a brilliant, and a truly beautiful chapter for all of humanity. We are being gently and lovingly invited to join a story that is far older than our most ancient and sacred myths, and far more wonderful than our wildest and most hopeful dreams. The beautiful and compelling evidence is before us in the strange, the elegant, and the purposeful behavior of a silent and a majestic visitor from the stars, in the ancient, the hopeful, and the half-forgotten whispers from our own most distant past, and in the quiet, the hopeful, and the joyful stirring in our own ever-wondering and ever-loving human hearts. We are standing on the quiet and sacred threshold of the most important, the most beautiful, and the most life-affirming moment in our entire history. The moment we finally and truly realize that we are, and that we have always and forever been, a cherished and an essential part of a living and an intelligent and a profoundly and unconditionally benevolent universe. 5. A symphony of worlds. In this beautiful, hopeful, and slowly unfolding future, our relationship with our celestial neighbor, Mars, would become a central, inspiring, and deeply sacred part of our new unified human identity. Mars would no longer be a distant, cold, red, and hostile world, a symbol of a dangerous and empty universe, a target for our own slow, arduous, and perhaps arrogant colonization efforts. It would become a living, breathing, and ever-present symbol of our benevolent and profound connection to the cosmos. A second beautiful garden in our solar system, a constant and inspiring reminder in our night sky of the boundless creative power and the infinite, selfless generosity of our cosmic ancestors. The terraforming of Mars would become the greatest, most inspiring, and most unifying scientific and spiritual event in all of human history. It would be a shared, global experience, a source of daily wonder, awe, and gratitude for every single person on Earth. We would watch through the ever-improving eyes of our probes and rovers, and eventually our own, with a sense of profound and reverent awe as a cold, dead world is gently, patiently, and beautifully brought back to life. We would see the first delicate and wispy clouds of pure white water ice form in a sky that has been tragically clear, thin and empty for eons. We would see the first sparkling and diamond-like frosts dust the sharp edges of the great craters in the gentle light of the Martian morning. We would see the vast white and ancient polar ice caps, which have been locked in a deep and frozen slumber for millions upon millions of years, begin to recede, releasing their ancient, trapped and life-giving atmosphere back into the world. And perhaps one day, after years or decades of patient watching, we would see the most magical and longed-for sight of all. The first, faint but unmistakable signs of liquid water flowing once more in the ancient, winding, and now hopeful riverbeds and the great, silent, and empty canyons. This incredible and miraculous transformation would not be our own achievement, and that is the most beautiful, the most humbling, and the most important part of it. It would be a profound and necessary lesson in our own limitations and in the vast, untapped potential of the universe. It would teach us, with a gentle and undeniable clarity, that there are forces and intelligences in the cosmos that are far, far beyond our own, and that we have so very, very much to learn. Our role, for the first time in our history, would be that of the humble student, the patient apprentice, the quiet and grateful witness. Our rovers and orbiters, which we sent to Mars as the proud tools of our own ambitious exploration, would become our eyes and ears in a grand cosmic classroom, sending back data that would not just be a scientific curiosity, but a source of daily inspiration, shared wonder, and profound spiritual connection for all of humanity. And when the time is right, when the new Martian biosphere has stabilized, when the air is thick enough to breathe without a helmet, and when the new living soil is ready, we would be invited to join the story. The first human steps on the surface of Mars would not be an act of conquest, a planting of a national flag in a new and claimed territory. It would be a gentle, a loving, and a deeply reverent pilgrimage. We would go not as colonists seeking to claim a new world for ourselves and our own purposes, but as co-stewards, as assistant gardeners, to learn from our wise and patient creators how to be responsible, loving, and humble caretakers of a new, young, and living world. Mars and Earth would then begin a new and beautiful relationship, becoming a true two-world system, a magnificent and harmonious symphony of life in our solar system. Earth would always and forever remain the cradle, our precious mother world, the ancient, complex, and incredibly diverse planet that gave us our birth. Its billions of years of intricate and complex evolution have created a biological richness and a depth of history that is irreplaceable, infinitely precious, and forever sacred.
Mars, on the other hand, would be the new, simpler world. It would be the school, the place for us to learn and to grow. It would be a planetary canvas upon which we could practice, with great care and humility, the vital lessons of ecological wisdom and gentle harmony that we have so often and so tragically failed to apply here on our own beautiful Earth. It would be a chance to begin again,
to build a new kind of human society, one founded not on the old, tired principles of competition, scarcity, and fear, but on the new, enlightened principles of cooperation, sustainability, and a deep, abiding, and joyful reverence for all of life. This two-world civilization would be incredibly strong, resilient, and enduring. The great existential dangers that currently threaten our existence as a fragile, vulnerable, and single-planet species, the threat of a catastrophic asteroid impact, a global pandemic that we cannot control, or an irreversible and tragic environmental collapse, all of these would be beautifully and profoundly mitigated. Life and the precious, irreplaceable flame of human consciousness would have a second home, a beautiful and vital insurance policy against the unforeseen and often violent dangers of the cosmos. The light of humanity would be shining from two windows in our solar system, not just one, making it far, far less likely that it could ever be accidentally or foolishly extinguished. The constant and gentle exchange of knowledge, of culture, of art, and of people between the two worlds would create a new and lasting renaissance of human creativity and innovation. The unique and exciting challenges of living on Mars, even a fully terraformed one, would spur the development of new sustainable technologies, new forms of beautiful integrated architecture, new ways of generating clean energy and of growing healthy food. The art, the music, and the philosophy that would emerge from a nascent Martian society would be beautifully and wonderfully different from our own, shaped by a different, softer gravity, a different, thinner, and more violet sky, and a different, more immediate and more humbling relationship with the vastness of the cosmos. Earth and Mars would be in a constant, creative, and inspiring dialogue, mutually enriching, challenging, and elevating each other towards a greater and more beautiful shared future. And in this grand new chapter of the human story, our cosmic ancestors, our benevolent and patient guardians, would be our teachers. They would not be distant, aloof, or judgmental gods looking down upon us from on high. They would wise, patient, and loving mentors walking beside us as we learn. They would share their immense and ancient knowledge, a knowledge accumulated over eons and across star systems. They would teach us the deeper, more subtle secrets of physics, of the true interconnected nature of space, time, and consciousness itself. They would teach us the secrets of biology, of how to create, sustain, and nurture stable and diverse ecosystems. They would teach us the secrets of cosmology, of our true and beautiful place in the grand, unfolding, and living story of the universe. They would teach us how to live in true, deep, and lasting harmony with our planets, and perhaps, one day when we have truly and fully matured as a species, when we have proven ourselves to be wise and compassionate caretakers, they would teach us how to travel to the stars ourselves. The ultimate and beautiful goal of this grand cosmic project would be to nurture us to our full and brilliant potential, to guide us and to teach us until we are ready to become creators in our own right, ready to take our place as conscious, joyful, and responsible partners in the great, ongoing, and sacred work of seeding, stewarding,
and celebrating life throughout the vast and beautiful expanse of our galaxy. This is the beautiful, profound, and deeply hopeful story that is whispered to us by the strange, elegant, and purposeful behavior of the celestial visitor known as 3I ATLAS. It is a story that transforms a mysterious astronomical anomaly into a harbinger of a brilliant and beautiful new dawn for all of humanity. It suggests that our future is not of random struggle and existential uncertainty, but one of boundless and beautiful potential, guided by a wisdom and a love that is as ancient, as patient, and as luminous as the stars themselves.
Conclusion. The choice of wonder. And so our long and gentle journey through this wondrous and hopeful possibility comes to its soft and quiet close. We have drifted on the gentle currents of thought from the strange, precise, and life-giving chemistry of a distant celestial visitor to the ancient, hopeful, and half-forgotten whispers of our own most sacred mythology. We have explored a beautiful potential future where our deep and pervasive cosmic loneliness is finally and completely replaced by a profound and comforting sense of belonging. A future where our troubled and beautiful world is healed and harmonized by a wisdom that is as vast, as patient, and as gentle as the galaxy itself. This is, of course, just one possible story. It is a single, hopeful, and optimistic thread in a vast and still unknown tapestry. The true nature and the ultimate purpose of 3I/Atlas remains a beautiful and profound mystery, and that is perhaps exactly as it should be. For it is in the act of wondering, of allowing our minds to float freely and gently in the calm, deep, and infinite ocean of possibility, that we find our most authentic, our most joyful, and our most deeply human connection to the cosmos. The universe does not always give us easy or simple answers, but it always gives us the sacred and precious gift of wonder. But as you settle now into the final, peaceful and weightless moments before you drift completely into a deep and restorative sleep, allow yourself to hold on to this beautiful and hopeful vision. Allow yourself to feel the quiet, profound, and deeply soothing comfort of a universe that is not empty, cold, and indifferent, but is instead alive, intelligent, and humming with a loving, creative, and ancient purpose. Allow yourself to feel that you are not a random and meaningless accident in a cold and empty void, but a cherished and intentional part of a grand and beautiful story. A story that is still unfolding. A story that is filled with a boundless and wonderful potential. The universe, in this beautiful view, is not something that is happening to you. It is something that is happening through you and for you. The universe is full of mysteries, but perhaps the greatest and most beautiful mystery of all is the one that lies waiting not in the distant, shimmering, and unreachable stars, but in the hopeful, the curious, the creative, and the ever-wondering human heart. Let that feeling of wonder be your final, gentle thought tonight.
Let it be the soft and cosmic lullaby that carries you at last into a deep, a peaceful, and a profoundly restorative sleep. Rest well, dear traveler. The great, silent, and loving universe is watching over you now and always. Good night.